Hey everyone, Rich Gasaway here. Have you heard about the SA Matters live virtual training yet? It is by far the most affordable and convenient way to get your members trained on situational awareness and high-risk decision-making. I will work with your training staff to set up a live, via the internet, training for your members on the date and the time of your regular department training. So if, for example, your training is on Tuesday nights from 7 to 9 p.m., that's when we'll do the live virtual training. And I'll come into your training room onto your television screen or the big screen via the internet and train your members. And this will include question and answer session and a recorded playback for any member who may have missed it. If your department training is on Thursday morning from 8 to 10, well, then that's when we do the training. And it is affordable and easy for you to sign up. Just visit the SA Matters website, scroll down to the orange area where it says Live Virtual Training. All right, that's enough of the pre-show stuff. Roll that podcast intro. Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
This is Battalion Chief Ryan Pyle from the Shawnee Fire Department, and you are listening to the SA Matters radio show with Dr. Rich Gasaway. The SA Matters mission is simple. They want to help us see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes.
Hello and welcome to episode 190 of the Situational Awareness Matters radio show. I'm your host, Rich Gasaway. The purpose of the show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SA Matters mission is simple: to help you see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes. I'm here to share with you a message of hope, a message of inspiration, and a message of encouragement for anyone who works in high-risk environments. I want to make sure you know how to make quality, high-risk decisions. And I'm dedicated to improving your safety and your survival and helping you to accomplish the most important goal of all, to go home to the ones who love you. And speaking of sharing the message, I'm coming to you today from Niagara Falls, Ontario, where I'm in town to deliver 2 situational awareness and safety programs for first responders throughout the Niagara region. Thank you to Training Officer Derek Hicks and all the members of the Niagara Falls Fire Department for making me feel so welcome. I especially enjoyed the helicopter ride that you provided for me over Niagara Falls. It's going to be a long time before anything tops that experience. Last month, while attending the Volunteer and Combination Officers Section Symposium in Clearwater Beach, Florida, I had the opportunity to award the Emerging Leader Scholarship to Fire Chief Joseph Bartos of the West Point, Virginia Fire Department. This is the 8th year I've sponsored this scholarship for an emerging leader to attend the VCOS Symposium. It's my way of paying it forward and giving back. I would also like to acknowledge and thank Scott Township Fire Chief Adam Farrar. Adam was the 2015 scholarship winner, and he also stepped up and is paying it forward by personally contributing $1,000 toward the scholarship. That's solid leadership, and thank you, Fire Chief Adam Farrar. One of the questions I get asked a lot by readers and listeners of the blog and podcast are, when are you coming to my area, or where are you going to be next? Great questions, and I've made it really easy to find out the answers. I've created a link on the homepage of the SA Matters website. All you have to do is click on the blue box on the right side that says Upcoming Events Schedule. Here's something else you should perhaps know. If you want to save some money hosting a program, and seriously, who doesn't want to save some money and reduce costs, right? Then you can host a companion program. Companion programs are programs that I do on adjoining days to other program deliveries. So if you see I'm going to be delivering a program within a couple hours of your department and you think you might want to tag along as a companion, contact me. And you can save as much as 20% off of your program costs by hosting a companion to an existing program. Okay, in today's feature segment, it's part one of a two-part interview I had with Norfolk Assistant Fire Chief John DiBacco, talking about after-action review process that the Norfolk Fire and Rescue Department uses to learn lessons from significant incidents. In October, I was in Chesapeake to deliver a 2-day situational awareness training, and I got the chance to catch up with one of my lifelong friends, Norfolk Assistant Chief John DiBacco. John and I served together in our very first fire department in Weirton, West Virginia. During this interview, John talks about the process he uses for conducting after-action reviews and shares lessons with his crews. Let's listen in. It's Rich Gasaway. Welcome to this episode of SA Matters radio podcast. And today I have with me my guest is Assistant Chief John DiBacco from Norfolk Fire Rescue. And we're going to be talking about the opportunities that are created when a department does a post-incident review or a post-incident evaluation, whatever term you want to put to it, and then some of the lessons you can learn and how that might help your organization become better, safer providers of our services. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rich. Good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. And so the conversation started out tonight talking about some of the creative things that you're doing in the area of looking at after-action review. First of all, let's just start with what do you call them?
Well, we have in Norfolk. We have two different topics here. One's an after-action review, and that's a formalized report that's written following an event. But we're more driven towards the post-incident review, which is anything from a company-level review, a tailboard review after an incident, to something more formalized that the assistant chief or the shift commander or the battalion chief might run, bringing in all parties who responded to the call and doing a more formalized, maybe like in a classroom type review. So,
okay.
But I think we're leaning towards the post-incident review, the more formalized classroom in-depth review of the incident.
Okay, so take me down history lane as to maybe what you used to do or not do, and then what you do now, and what led to the creation of what you're doing, and what was the motivation to go this route and inspire you to want to, pull those lessons out and share them, kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question, and you think back to our early days, I'll say our young days in the service, and even probably up within the last 10 to 15 years with my experience here in Norfolk, and I've been here for 25 years. We used to call them critiques, and you would have a critique when something didn't go right. You never had a critique when things went really good.
True.
So whenever the chief or officer would say, we're going to have a critique, it was, first of all, hoping that you weren't the target of the critique. And if you weren't the target of the critique, bring your popcorn, sit in the back row, and watch the show. And it was either entertaining or uncomfortable, depending where you were sitting in the room. And I think it was generally accepted that at the end of that event, there wasn't a whole lot of learning going on. People got defensive, and you learned how not to share information in that environment, because if you shared information, a lot of times you were shot down or publicly ridiculed by those who were in command. So I've been there and had that experience, and I just knew as I progressed through my career, coming up through the ranks of lieutenant, captain, battalion chief, and now assistant chief, it's not the way I wanted to do business, because I don't believe that's the best way to teach, to learn, and to incorporate or put out there your values that you expect from your personnel. When I was completing my undergraduate degree, I did some research on naturalistic decision making, focused from Dr. Gary Klein in his work, and I've always been interested in that model, how we make decisions under pressure, and I think you talk quite a bit about time pressure and time and how we make decisions and all those things that go in. So I think it's your audience and people who've been in your programs have heard you talk about that side of the house. Mm-hmm. So when I came to Norfolk, we had good reviews, and we had some that were the true sit back and watch the show. And as I said, I wanted to see something different. So I took the information that I put together during my undergraduate research and made a proposal to the department that I would like to incorporate this style of review, which was more of a decision-making critique focus as opposed to a let's go over the incident piece by piece and pick it apart. And so I developed working with some other BCs to get it into policy, a decision-making critique guided post-incident review. And we use that as the format now for our incident reviews. In the formal, the company officers are encouraged to use something similar when they do their smaller reviews, but if we do a formal one, that's the process we run through, and that's the process that I use when I run through it.
What's that look like? Is that a list of questions that you send out that people answer and that information comes back to you? Or what's the framework on this look like when you're trying to extract decision-making processes out of the I assume at the company level, or are you trying to get the decision-making out of the battalion level, or both?
Well, we start with the company officers. Obviously, are the people who are making the early decisions on the initial ICs, and then the people who were assigned task work, and they had to make decisions on how they're going to complete their task. As well as the command officers. If the battalion came in, IC2 was transferred over. So anybody who was in the command chain, from company officer all the way up to whatever level command had or level rank had it. Okay. Ideally, we get this out, and we've incorporated this into policy in the department. So this isn't a surprise when we say, "Hey, we're going to be doing a review on this incident on this date." We do have policy, and within that policy is the decision-making critique questionnaire that we ask them to fill out ahead of time. So there's nothing secret about it. It's out there for anybody to look at. And basically, and I not having one in front of me to go over every question, but it's the things. What decisions did you have to make? What were your hard decisions? Why were they hard? What do you know now that you didn't know at the time that would have changed your decision? Knowing what you know now, would you have made a different decision? And then we ask about some lessons learned or things they've learned from that. And then we take those and we use that as a part of a guide to guide the incident review. And the companies can use that information. Really, I want them to think about the incident more than going back and debriefing and sitting down and kind of forgetting about those lessons. Really to try to think about the hard decisions, what was learned, and how we can teach others or show others going through. So the decision-making questionnaire is just part of it, kind of as a guide.
Is there certain types of incidents that you review, or certain criteria for an incident to be eligible then to be a review? Or do you review like every working incident or every full first alarm working incident? Or what's the criteria by which you choose which incidents are going to get a review and which ones aren't? Or is it based on the outcome and what happened that might drive a review?
Well, we expect our company officers to do a review for any incident that involves 4 or more units that go, and it could be anything from a simple kitchen fire. It could be an auto extrication with a trapment, something maybe nothing more than a door pop or something along that line. And those reviews would be done at the company level, and those could be done, as we say here, we say a tailboard review. They can be done on the scene, get everybody together, and let's talk about this for a few minutes before we go back to the station. Our policy does have some criteria for the more formal review, and that benchmark hits at a second alarm or greater. Technical rescues, which we do a lot of technical rescue work in the shipyards here with the military ships and commercial ships. We have a lot of construction, so we end up doing a lot of technical rescue, so that might rise to a level. Obviously, if you get into things like significant firefighter injuries, civilian injuries, those would rise to the level of doing a more formalized review. and we always leave that last bullet in there. The command officer has the ability to call one anytime he or she feels that there's lessons to be learned that need to be shared, and we'll formalize it in that regard.
So if there were an incident that was maybe not a significant type of incident, but along the way there was a near miss that occurred during that incident, that might be something that would get elevated to a review to try to see, what happened with that near miss. Like, I think like 4 companies go to a fire alarm activation. There isn't a fire there, but something happens on that call. I can't give you a great example, but something happens on that call results in a near miss to, maybe it was almost got hit by a car driving by based on where they staged or something like that. Would something like that then get elevated to the review level?
Well, I can't say I know that any of those have. They certainly would be. That's not in the policy that we would do that, but that would fall under the command officer has the ability to raise it to that level. Okay. And hope our company officers and chief officers would recognize the value in something like that of learning and sharing that lesson. Now, the
informal one could be just a company officer with their crew, a tailboard kind of talk.
That's correct.
The more formal one, is it the more formal one that results in them having the decision questionnaire to complete?
Yes.
And then what additional components are there besides the decision questionnaire? Is there more to it, or is that the document that drives the process?
Well, I can tell you the way I run my reviews, and as an example. So what I do is a formal presentation in there, and I try to do some things that are maybe a little bit different. And I don't know if everybody has opportunity to get this, has access to the same resources that I do. So again, I'll invite and we do it on duty, and on the companies who are the key players there. I'll get as many of them there as I can. Obviously, sometimes with the number of companies there, I can't pull that many out of service for that period of time, but we get as many as we can. I like to start out my reviews with playing the 911 tapes of the caller calling in, the 911 callers who are actually requesting emergency fire service to respond.
And then for your response crews, that unto itself could be new information.
That is absolutely true. And as example, we recently had a 2-alarm fire, residential single-family dwelling fire with 2 exposures on fire. And multiple calls. It was a 9 o'clock in the evening, big fire, lots of people saw it, lots of people were calling. So I played 5 of the 911 calls that came in on that fire, and not a single person identified the address of the fire. It was in this area. It's close to this intersection. It's by this. I can see it in the distance, but none of them had a physical address. When that call was dispatched, they dispatched it as a known address on that road. The known address they picked was a 12-story residential high-rise apartment building. So the conversation, so we played these tapes up front in the review, and everybody listens to them. Then I say, okay. Then I play the dispatch tape, the channel dispatcher putting the first alarm out, and then I stop it and I ask them, what were you thinking? I talked to the first in-company officer. What were you thinking when you heard that address and the dispatcher saying, receiving multiple calls of the building on fire, here's the address? And how does that change your thought of what you're going to do with your crew and who's coming with you? And how does that change the battalion chief who's responding in their thought process? Because now we're looking, instead of what's actually on fire is a 2.5-story single family, they're putting out an address as a 12-story high-rise residential apartment building. So that's like one of the first steps up front. So we try to get that mindset of what were you thinking going there? And I don't go into the Wallace was hot or coal was wealth factors that we all learned when we were getting promoted and we had to study those. But those are factors, the incident address and the resources you have coming and where are they coming from and what's the time of the day, and that all plays into listening to the tape and listening to this dispatch and then having that conversation with the companies. Okay, what were you thinking based on this information now? And I think it gives them some insight into why, when they arrive on scene, what they find is not necessarily what they were told on the radio. And that has to do with reliability of the caller and doing the best they can calling it in. Then you get the dispatch in the middle who has to squeeze it into the CAD system so it's able to be dispatched. And so that changes it. And then what they receive and what they actually have. And I think that all plays into their initial decision making in anticipation of what they're going to have.
When you said squeeze it into the CAD, I'm not tracking what that means. What's that mean? They only have so many lines of to type in, and they have to condense the information. What do you mean when you say squeeze it? Or is it a time thing? We got to get it done in a time compressed way. What does squeezing it into the CAD mean?
And I'm not an expert in our CAD system, but I can tell you that they can, for an address, for example, if you called in an address and that address doesn't match anything in the database, they can't put that address in. So if your address is 123 Main Street, and 123 Main Street's not a choice that they have to make.
Not a valid address.
It's not a valid address. They can't put it in. So they may put it in as an alias, which might be a building they find a building, the Walmart is located at 234 Main Street. Okay. They'll punch it in so they have to. They're taking information, and I say squeeze it. They're trying to figure out how to make it work
into the system
as a valid address. Mm-hmm. So in this case, they didn't have a valid address, and instead of putting a block in, which they could do a general block or an area, mm-hmm. They put in as a known address, which was a good full 1 block away, but it completely changed.
And a very different structure.
Very different structure, a very different thought process rolling out the door.
Yeah.
So once we talk about that, then what I like to do, and what I'm trying to do is I want to lay it out for the people who are doing review as much information about the actual building before we start talking about how it was burning in a fire case. And so I have access, and this is public access in Norfolk, property data information. So I'll use things like when the building was built, how many square footage the building was, and I put this in on a PowerPoint. I'll put up a slide with construction style, when it was built, how many square foot building it is. I'll take photographs from, you can do anything from Google driving around, take a picture of the building. We have a pictometry system, so I pull pictures from pictometry, and we talk about what the buildings actually look like. And that way, this last fire, I'm giving an example, was a nighttime fire. Well, you really didn't have a good perspective of everything else around there. And so now we're looking now in a clear classroom environment. Here's what you really had. Does this match up with what you were seeing at night? Because now you have a clear picture. In this controlled environment, this is what you're looking at. Your exposures were 10 feet apart. At nighttime, when this building was fully involved, did you realize, besides your exposure was on fire, but the diminished clearance? Or your building was 50 foot across the front, but it was 100 foot deep. Did you recognize that just from the front of the building? And we talk about the building dimensions and how that plays into it. And that will come in a little bit later. One thing I'd like to do with that also is I can pull up the property data value, and this is just something that I throw in there, and that's the assessed value of the property, whether it's $1 million home or whether it's a $75,000 home, whether it's an occupied or not, and we talk about that. And does that go into your decision making on how you're attacking the fire, or how much risk you want to put into the event? If you know you have a building that has been deemed of low value and it's a vacant building or unoccupied building, does that have the same? Are you still thinking that? And I'm not saying there's a right or a wrong answer, but I want to know how you're thinking and what you're thinking about with that, and what kind of how that's going to affect your decision making, or if it did affect your decision making on that. Once we do the background on it and look at these buildings, then I like to play the incident tape, and I take out all the dead spacing in between, and we just run through the radio transmissions, everything from the initial on-scene size up to the assignments that were given, and let everybody hear that as a refresher. And that takes, we'll play the first 15 or 20 minutes of the incident going through. And usually by about 15, 20 minutes, we're at a point where it's, the urgency is kind of dying down a little bit. But I'll stop at that point, and then we start talking to the companies.
Okay, that concludes part one of the two-part interview with Norfolk Assistant Fire Chief John DiBacco. Join us next week when we do part two of the interview. I need a favor. I launched this podcast to give voice to those who've experienced near misses. The stories that have been shared with me at live events have been amazing and very educational. And in case you've missed the 3 episodes I did with the members of the St. Charles Fire Department, you need to go back and listen to that. Their near-miss event was absolutely bone-chilling. Every once in a while, those from the live event come onto the podcast and share their lessons learned. We need to get more of these lessons learned shared with a larger audience. So if you've experienced or witnessed a near miss and would like to have a platform to share your lessons learned with others, please contact me by visiting the SA Matters website and clicking on the Contact Us tab. Think about it for a moment. The lessons learned from your near miss event could save someone else's life. That's really powerful. And if you want to share that gift, contact me. If you want to send me feedback, I'd love to hear from you. You can do that right from the SA Matters website. Just click on the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage, and that will send me an email. By the time this episode airs, I will have completed programs here in Niagara Falls and also in Woodstock, Ontario, and Canfield, Ohio. I'll be presenting on the evening that this podcast airs in Jefferson County, Ohio, for their LEPC and the Wintersville Volunteer Fire Department. And thank you to Fire Chief Rob Harrington for hosting the second visitation. I really appreciate the invite to come back. If you want to attend an upcoming Situational Awareness Matters Tour Stop event, you could join me on December 13th in Lorain County Community College in the daytime, and then in Solon, Ohio in the evening. Then on December 14th, again in Solon, Ohio in the evening. Also on December 14th in Twinsburg, Ohio in the daytime. And December 15 and 16 in Twinsburg, Ohio too. Then on January 10 and 11, I'll be in Henrico County, Virginia. January 20th, BX Swan Lake Fire Department in Alberta, Canada. January 21, the Penticton, Alberta Fire Department. January 27th, St. Louis, Michigan. January 28th, Portage, Michigan. January 29 to February 2, Evansville, Indiana. If you want to see the location of all the upcoming Situational Awareness Matters tour stops, head over to the SA Matters website and click on the blue box on the right side of the homepage labeled Upcoming Events Schedule. The schedule is always changing, so you might want to check back often. If you're interested in hosting a Situational Awareness Matters tour stop event, I'm already booking programs for 2018. So if you think your company or agency or association or regional conference or state conference or national conference might want to host a program, just contact me through the SA Matters website and we'll get something set up for you. I have a great staff and they'll make it really easy for you, I promise. The last time I was delivering programs in Southwest Minnesota, I stopped by and visited the sponsor for this podcast show, Midwest Fire. Midwest Fire is a fire truck manufacturing company that makes amazing all-poly-bodied fire apparatus, and it's changing the industry. If you haven't checked them out yet, you need to. Just visit MidwestFire.com. That's MidwestFire.com. Anyhow, I got a chance to sit down and talk to some of their employees about what separates Midwest Fire from their competitors. Let's listen into the conversation that I had with engineer Tyler LeBrun. So Tyler, in a conversation that we had earlier, you mentioned the term lean process or lean manufacturing. And then when we were out on the shop floor, you were like snapping around these Japanese terms that, I guess in the lean manufacturing world mean something. What is all this, voodoo magic of lean manufacturing or lean process? What does it mean, and why would a customer even care that you run a lean facility?
Well, one of the big things with lean is it's very focused on the customer. Basically, you look at it as what the customer is willing to pay for. There's waste in our process. There's waste in everybody's process that they have if they own any type of business. And what waste is defined as is anything the customer is not willing to pay for. We had a good example down there of, maybe you've been in some different shops and seen stuff just scattered around everywhere, like maybe a floor jack, like somebody used it and left it right there. Well, now the next time somebody wants to go find that floor jack, if they've got to walk around for 5 or 10 minutes, that's a waste that the customer's not willing to pay for. They don't want our guys to be down here wandering around looking for parts. They want them to be putting things onto their truck, and that stuff is value added. The walking around and stuff that you're not willing to pay for is non-value added. And that's really what drives down and brings us to be able to offer something better to the customer, that we are building a truck more efficiently, which obviously passes savings on to them. We talked about our inventory control system, Kanban, one of those fun Japanese words, that basically allows for a system to be around our parts ordering, that the operators control that they go down, they reach a minimum point, they pull a card, they do that kind of stuff, but the parts are always there for them. Not only are the parts always there, but there's not an excess amount of those parts, which costs us money to carry, which we would then obviously, no doubt, have to pass on to the customer. But by reducing all these costs, getting rid of all the waste, we're really able to better give the customer a more quality truck, faster and possibly at less cost than a competitor.
So everybody here, I assume, has to go through some training to learn how to be part of a lean process manufacturing?
Yep. So there's a couple of different ways that we've done that. There's been some guys that have been able to go out and do actual hands-on training at some seminars or that kind of stuff. We've also gone out and taken tours of some real-world class facilities in the area that we've been lucky enough to have. We also do some mentorship. That's something that I've been able to take my experience and kind of help the guys look at all that kind of stuff. But it really boils down to having a team that's willing to work together and continuously improve. And that continuous improvement is the big thing, is that we don't have a set goal in mind that we are going to be at X in 2016 and then we're never going to do anything again. Lean is really about continuous improvement and just realizing that you're constantly in the pursuit of perfection. If you're not improving, you're on the decline. So that's really some of the ideas behind that, with the continuous improvement and obviously training the employees.
Well, there you have it, folks. Continuous self-improvement and lean manufacturing. It's what separates Midwest Fire from their competitors. Check them out at MidwestFire.com. Thank you to Midwest Fire President Sarah Atchison and all your staff for your awesome commitment to improving first responder safety. I really appreciate your support of my mission. Hey, if you're not a member of the SA Matters community of learners yet, there are more than 50,000 connected here through the newsletter, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, sharing ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to train to be critical thinkers and resilient problem solvers. If you want to sign up for my newsletter, here's a real easy way to do it, and it's free. Just get out your smartphone and text SA Matters to 22828. That's the letter S as in Sam, the letter A as in Adam, and the word matters, all together, SA Matters, one word, to 22828. You'll get a message back about accessing my program handouts, too. And you can just consider the program handouts a bonus for signing up. If you want to get connected with me on Twitter, you can follow at Rich Gasaway on Twitter. You can get connected with me on LinkedIn by searching for Rich Gasaway on LinkedIn. You can watch my videos on the SA Matters TV YouTube channel. That's SA Matters TV altogether, one word, on YouTube. You can also get connected with me on Facebook by liking the SA Matters page. Finally, if you would like to advertise your product or service on this podcast and through my social media connections, contact me. This podcast has enjoyed over 250,000 downloads, and it's a great way to get your message into the ears of the SA Matters community of learners. Well, that's it. Episode 190 is complete. Thank you to my guest, Norfolk Assistant Fire Chief, and perhaps more importantly, my good friend, John DiBacco, for sharing your process for conducting after-action reviews. Remember, this was part one of a two-part interview, so be sure to come back next week to hear the second part of John's interview. You know, if you subscribe to the podcast, say, for example, on iTunes, you'll get every episode in your podcast feed on your smartphone. Just saying. Thank you to our awesome podcast sponsor, Midwest Fire. Thank you to all the companies and agencies and organizations that have hosted live events. Thank you to all who have arranged live virtual training programs. Thank you to the SA Matters Online Academy students. And most importantly, thank you, the listeners of this podcast show, for sharing some of your valuable time with me. I do really appreciate your support of my mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gasaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgasaway.com.